During our 2 weeks in Italy on holiday, we took our son and our Labrador into cafes and restaurants, drove from place to place in our minivan, and spent most of the trip adjusting plans around naps, bottles, and whatever the dog needed at that moment. And at some point, I realized how normal it all started to feel. 5 months earlier, even leaving the house felt like something we needed all morning to prepare for. Now we're traveling through another country as a family, and even when it was chaotic, we usually knew what to do. So I thought this would be a good time to give you all an update and also talk about some developmental milestones with our son. Hi, I'm Robert. I'm one of the two dads behind Papaarade together with my husband Martin. Our son is just over 5 months old now. Before he was born, we spent years thinking about becoming parents, and we've been documenting our whole journey on Papaarade and here on YouTube. And our journey involved surrogacy in the United States. So there were legal steps, medical appointments, paperwork, and a lot of waiting. And for a long time, the phrase we used for ourselves was intended parents, or Wunscheltern in German. We were always preparing for something that had not happened yet. We were making decisions for our future child, talking to our agency and doctors, reading about what would happen after birth, and trying to imagine what our everyday life might look like. Then he was born, and suddenly there was no more imagining. We were responsible for an actual baby. I think because the journey had taken so long, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves in the beginning. We read so many books and watched so many videos. We had looked up recommendations about feeding, sleep, development, and almost anything else that could possibly come up. We wanted to be prepared and we wanted to do things properly. I also think being two dads added something to this. Nobody around us was telling us that we had to prove ourselves, and most people have been very supportive. But still, I think we felt a responsibility to show that we took parenthood seriously. And a lot of that probably came from us. We had spent years trying to become fathers. So when it finally happened, we, of course, wanted to get everything right. And in the first weeks, Martin and I did almost everything together. If one of us was, I don't know, changing a diaper, the other one was standing nearby. If our son was drinking from a bottle, we were both watching how much we drank, and we had a diary and we were writing down every milliliter. If he made a sound we had not heard before, we would just both look at each other and try to figure out what it meant, and figuring out what all the different cries mean, that sort of thing. And then when we got back to Germany, we were both on parental leave, and I'm still very grateful for that time. Neither of us had to leave in the morning and come back later asking what had happened all day. We were just both there and learned how to take care of him. It also meant that neither of us became the parent who knew everything while the other waited for instructions. We both had our own ways of holding him, calming him down, getting him to sleep. I think Marta and I also had very different tactics about that in the beginning. Just build our own relationship with him from the beginning. And that really helped us a lot, especially once everyday life started moving a little bit faster. At first, leaving the house felt like a huge project. We checked the diaper bag several times. We tried to predict exactly when he would need to drink and when he would become tired, and doing all the reverse math behind that. We thought about how long we could be gone and whether we had packed enough of everything. And then we did it a few times or dozens of times. And if we forgot something, we found a solution. If a bottle leaked, or a nap happened at a different time or arrived somewhere later than we planned, none of those things became a disaster that we had imagined. And that's probably one of the main differences between the first weeks and now. We still care just as much and we want to make thoughtful decisions. We just do not panic every time the day looks different from the plan. We also stopped feeling as though every small choice says something about whether we are good parents. Sometimes we get things wrong, sometimes we misunderstand what he needs, sometimes we try one thing and realize it does not help, and then we try something else. It sounds very obvious when I say it now and out loud, but in the beginning, we were much harder on ourselves. We had all this information in our heads, and real life did not always match it. Our son also has his own personality, which becomes clear all the time. It's really fun to watch and grow. And in the beginning, you love your baby and you are completely responsible for them, but you're still trying to understand who they are. And now we know so much more about him. He is generally very happy and social. He likes being around people and pays a lot of attention to what we are doing. If I'm preparing food or like washing dishes, he can watch for a surprisingly long time. I sometimes start explaining what I'm doing, kind of narrating what I'm doing. And yeah, even though the 5-month-old doesn't know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, I don't know, the dishwasher for several minutes. But yeah, it's fun. And he's started making a lot more sounds. Some of them seem to be part of a conversation, and some of them are probably just him discovering that he can make very loud noises. He's much more interested in objects now and moves them around in his hands before putting everything into his mouth. Almost everything goes into his mouth at the moment because his first 2 teeth are coming in. And sometimes, like when I'm holding him, my fingers are apparently very useful for teething. I think because they're soft, and he enjoys like touching my face, grabbing my facial hair, my nose, like pulling my hair. His grip is definitely becoming a lot stronger, so those interactions are less gentle than they used to be. And yeah, a big topic with us right now, he can roll from his back onto his stomach. And he spent a while almost managing it and getting stuck. And then one day he worked it all out. And since then, he wants to do it constantly. And that also changed the way that he sleeps. We still put him back down in the bed on his back, as you should, but he can now move himself onto the side or stomach. And the first few times that happened, I checked him constantly because it was such a change from the way he had slept before. Sleep in general is the big part of our routine that feels the least predictable right now. For the first few months, we used the snoo bed, which it's a bassinet that responds when the baby is restless, and the inner part moves, and it plays white noise at 4 different levels, which often helped him to settle again. It's designed to settle him that way to avoid from having to pick him up every time, which many people know for newborns means that they truly wake up or have difficulty getting back to sleep. The snoo does shut off if he is restless for too long or is crying hard. It's just supposed to ease falling asleep and, more importantly, falling back to sleep, not a substitute for checking in on them or taking over if they truly need to be consoled. But it worked very, very well for us. But we knew that we would eventually have to move him into a normal crib. Before we went on our trip to Italy, we started putting him already into a travel bed at home so that he could get used to it before the trip. And that part was much better than we expected. The bedtime routine itself has definitely become more difficult though. He's teething, he's, like I said, learned to roll over. We were away for 2 weeks, and during this time, there was a major heat wave in Europe, and it was so hot. If we didn't actually have air conditioning in Italy, I don't know how we would have made it, to be honest. When we got back to Germany, it was horrible. He's also become less interested in drinking during the day. He's drinking a lot more before bed, or like he wakes up very hungry. So like basically the things that worked a few months ago do not always work now. Sometimes he wants to be held differently, he drinks differently, he drinks only a little bit, but then once more 10 minutes later. Sometimes he's obviously tired, but still wants to roll around or chew on something. And we're having to learn what bedtime looks like for him now. It definitely takes longer than it used to, and some evenings are simply very difficult. I think the way we react to that shows how much we have changed. During the first weeks, if something stopped working, we immediately wondered what we had done wrong. And now we're just likely to accept that he has changed and that our routine has changed. We do not always know what he needs straight away. Sometimes we try several things. Sometimes we are just tired and less patient. than we would like to be. We try to notice that and do better the next time, of course. I think that is a more realistic version of parenting than the one we had in our heads before he was born. Outside the house, we also now feel much, much more comfortable. We take him to coffee shops and restaurants, and we've learned that he is often just very happy being included in whatever we are doing. We still definitely think about timing and whether a place will work for us, but we no longer feel that we have to stay at home because we have a baby. The Italy trip was definitely a big step for us in that sense. I think I'm going to talk about the trip itself in another video because 2 weeks in Italy with a 5-month-old, a Labrador, and a minivan, which is not always the best for driving in Italy, gave us enough material for a whole separate story, and just really interesting with the Italian culture, how they handle babies and dogs and that sort of thing. I mean, it can really be a lot when the baby and the dog both need something at the same time. Sometimes our son is completely relaxed and the dog is the difficult one. Sometimes the dog is asleep and the baby's crying or needs a bottle. So yeah, Marta and I have become really good at, looking at each other and maybe immediately knowing who is going to handle which situation. I think that trip showed us that we can adapt much more easily than we thought. We also learned that a good day does not have to follow the exact routine we have at home. Being out as a family still means something to us. Most of the time, sitting in a cafe with our son or carrying him through the city feels completely ordinary. I'm very grateful that it feels that way. There are still moments when I remember how much had to happen for us to reach this point. For years, having a child was something we were working towards. We had to explain our plan. We were working with agencies, lawyers, doctors, and sometimes people who knew very little about surrogacy or families with two fathers. Now, we are usually just two tired dads trying to finish a coffee before it gets cold, while also keeping an eye out on the dog and making sure he doesn't steal baby toys. In the past, Papaarade followed us while we were trying to become parents. A lot of our story was about the next step, the next appointments, or the next thing that had to happen before our son could be here. Now, our life is about bottles in the kitchen, changing sleep routines, teeth coming in, and deciding whether we have enough diapers with us. Being fathers has become part of our normal identity. We still want to share the things we learn, including the things that work for us and the things that do not. We also want to talk honestly about the pressure that can come with being parents. After a long or complicated journey, we do not have the perfect method. We're not trying to present ourselves as people who always know what to do. But what we can offer is our experience of building a family through surrogacy, raising a child as two fathers, and working out what parenthood looks like for us in Germany. 5 months in, we know our son so much better. We recognize many of his needs before he becomes upset, and we trust ourselves more than we did at the beginning. His sleep routine has become more difficult. Our routines keep changing, and some days just require a lot of patience. At the same time, we feel comfortable taking him into our life and doing things together as a family. We're still trying to be the best fathers that we can be. We are just no longer expecting ourselves to do everything perfectly. Perfect does not exist. I would really like to know whether you felt similar pressure when you first became a parent, especially if your journey to parenthood took a long time or looked different from the people around you. And when did parenting start to feel normal for you? Was there a particular moment, or did you only notice the change afterwards? Let us know in the comments. And if you've been following us since we were intended parents, thank you for staying with us as Papaarade moves into this part of our story. I will also be sharing more about our first long trip as a family in another video. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.